Now, of course, we're talking all day about the terrorist attacks, and it's on everyone's mind in Brussels yesterday. But they're going to leave a lasting impression on all of us, but especially on children.
But how can parents help their children process all of this? Psychologist Allison Keating is with us. You're very welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Do you know, as an adult and as a parent, you're trying to make sense of it ourselves, right? And how do you then make sense of it how can you make your children make sense of it if you can make sense of it yourself?
See, that's exactly it. And I think that, adults need to talk about it. And I think it's very easy to do, like in daily conversations. Literally the first thing, if you came across someone, would be like, oh my God, you see what actually happened in Brussels or in Buncrana. So it's going to be something that you can actually talk about. And it will bring up a lot of feelings, especially for parents, that sense of uncertainty and fear. And especially, say, even with Buncrana, it brings up such... How will they actually be able to deal with this?
I mean, the footage here now, kids inadvertently will see this just by being in a room if the news is on and stuff like that. And, you can see bodies on the floor, this type of thing. And, what should you say? And let's break it down into different age groups. Say you've got a 4 and 5-year-old, they're still aware there's something going on. What should you say?
To be quite honest, if they're 4 and 5, I would say turn the television off.
Right, so just don't go there.
Absolutely. And only around 5 or 6 children actually even realise that death is permanent.
I see.
I just actually feel that if it's of a graphic nature, which the news has become much, much more.
It has.
We always watch the news as children, watching TV, or not watching TV, but having our dinner. And I just think that the news nowadays is very sensational. It's very graphic, and your brain can't unsee images, and if you can't actually process it, I think that a lot of children, adolescents, they sound very articulate, they look really worldly, but to be quite honest, the structure of their brain hasn't changed.
Still kids.
So developmentally, they can't process the
What
information.
age, though, can they process this? I mean, what age should you actually talk about? You mentioned Buncrana, I mean, very close to home, and, children died in that dreadful tragedy. So, this is going to be headline news, for weeks. What should you say to a little kid, like say 10, 11, 12-year-old, your pre-teens, come up to you? How should you approach it?
The first thing is find out what they know. I wouldn't offer information.
Okay.
And as you said, I think it's going to be so widespread that they will actually hear something.
They will.
Say even for adolescents, they're on social media, so the likelihood of them seeing things is becoming more and more. And also, videos are being put up. With the Paris attacks, they were showing live footage of the shootings. So we have to kind of step back and actually say, there's a very fine line between fact and fiction for children, because they're just watching television. And when we watch television as adults, we recognise where it actually is geographically. So this is in Belgium or this is in Syria. But the children, they have now brought it into their home. So that anxiety and uncertainty, that sense of my world is not safe anymore. So as parents, we have to normalise those fears.
And you can't leave them fill in the blanks themselves. You can't, really.
See, that's what actually children will do. Children will fill in the blanks. So if they're asking questions, listen to them. Acknowledge what they're actually frightened about. And it sounds really counterintuitive, but actually say to them, yes, it is scary, isn't it? And what do you think about this? And somehow say, in terms of the terrorism, we have to actually understand the intent of terrorism is to make us feel fear. So your purpose as a parent is to try and just
allay those fears.
Just normalise that their fears are normal. You don't have to say, look, that'll never happen here. But it's good to kind of come in and say, look, we have to look at this as probability and possibility. And our brain notices things on mass levels. So the reason that it's actually in the news is because it is rare. And that's why it's actually on. So the possibility of it happening in your home time is quite low, but your brain goes, danger. So, this is very,
so you have to be truthful to them.
Yes, but be very aware of their age, be very aware of the language that you use. You don't need to, elaborate at a deep level. And I think you've got to remember, I would limit the actual visual level of it. And when you're in the car, if it's really graphic and, the children are listening, so just turn it off. Just turn it off.
Should you avoid ever using the word kill or death or that type of thing if you can? Should you say, people are hurting people? Should you mitigate what's actually happening?
It's just so difficult, really, isn't it? But I think it's not a good idea to use, say, sometimes people, they say they've gone to, they're just gone to sleep, or do use the proper terms, but just be aware of the age of the child and think, what can they actually process here?
Are boys and girls, does it affect them differently?
I don't know. I think that what we have to recognise is age level. So say if you think about adolescents, perhaps more adolescent boys are playing violent video games. And what's happening with that is that perhaps when they actually see things on TV, they've actually nearly become desensitised to it already and immune to it. And therein lies, say, from children to adolescents, that when they see the real images, do they actually realise that this actually really is happening? So it's on both sides. We do need to actually talk to children about things that have happened, but we do have to protect childhood, which is about innocence, really.
Have you seen, obviously you deal with these subjects, have you seen children become desensitised by watching these videos?
Yes, because I mean, when we talk about what parents do, they role model, and we try and role model in a positive way. So what the video games are at a very kind of neurological level, if they're seeing it, they're hearing it, they can even feel things sometimes. So it's a very full sensory experience.
Monitor that as well.
But it's also something relatively new for parents. Maybe only in the last 10 or 15 years, like when we were growing up, that all we had was those little tiny plastic soldiers, and that was it. Like.
Yeah.
But now they're actually in the middle of a war with a gun in their own heads. Proper inside the TV.
And they're very sophisticated. So, I mean, when it actually has been shown on the television, then I just think we have to recognise that news nowadays is much more sensationalised than it was before.
Allison, thank you.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thanks
very
a lot
much.
for coming in.